It's time for another GarbAugust video. GarbAugust is a fun reading event where we celebrate all kinds of pulp fiction and trashy non-fiction. And we mean this in a very loving way. More information about this fun reading event in the description box below, along with links with all of the other co-hosts and the host, criminally. And I am honored to be one of the co-hosts of this fun reading event as well. There are not only weekly prompts, but there is also a bingo card, the GarbAugust card. And one of the prompts on the GarbAugust card is category romance. Now, I'm not really a romance kind of reader. It's a genre I don't really feel attracted to, I must admit. But category romance is your typical Mills and Boons and Harlequin monthly publications of romance novels. But for my long ongoing pulp project, I did read a short story that was published in a pulp magazine in 1905 that has some romance in it. Well, a creepy kind of romance. Well, it has love in it anyway. So I am cheating a little bit, and I am going to cross off the category romance box on the GarbAugust card because I read this short story. And there is another prompt on the GarbAugust card, which I can tick off with this story because it was published in 1905, and that is Vintage Trash. This is Obscure Book Adventures. I am your host, Annie. And like I said, today we are going back to 1905, when this creepy romance story was published. A Lodger by Day by M.E. Millholen. And to explain the creepiness of the story, of this romance story, I have to spoil the plot a little bit, but I will let you know in advance when I come to that point in this video. And also in this video I will be taking a look what I liked about the story and what I did not like the story. And I will go on a thought experiment as I didn't think this story was really that special or that good. I thought, let's see if we can make this story a more modern story and give the writer some constructive criticism and see if we can make the story a better and more entertaining one. Not that I think the writer is still around, as he or she wrote it in 1905. But that aside. But first I want to talk a little bit about when the story was published and in which magazine it was published. It was published in Smith magazine, and it was published in the December issue of 1905. Smith magazine was first published in April of 1905, and according to Wikipedia, it was created for the John Smith of the world. Well, it's probably better to be a John Smith than a John Doe, but I could be wrong. So it's no surprise that a Lodger by Day, as this magazine was directed mainly to a male reading audience, that a Lodger by Day was mainly written for men. It's also written from the male perspective. Later, The magazine directed its story more to a female reader, and again later the magazine, Smith's magazine, would merge with the more successful Love Story magazine and probably switch to a female reading audience altogether. I haven't been able to find out anything about writer Millholen. I don't even know if Millholen was, if the writer was a woman or a man. I have no idea. But I can talk a little bit about the writing style. Like I said, the story is told from a male perspective, and the main character is a homeless man named McMasters. We hear his thoughts and we see his actions from his point of view. And we hear his thoughts when he starts to fancy this woman, Ruth, whom he never met. But he finds her bag, and in the bag is he sees her entering a tram, going onto a tram, and she loses her bag, and the tram drives off, and he finds her bag. And in this bag is not only a house key, there is her name in it, and there is her address in it as well. And let's not forget, there's a large amount of cash in it as well. Well, people in 1905 paid everything with cash, so that is not unusual. But it is really stupid to have your keys and your home address in the same bag. But maybe not so stupid back in 1905. I don't know. So the writing style isn't anything out of the ordinary for a pulp story from written in 1905. It's just written like somebody telling a story, saying, hey, this is what I experienced and such things. There's little suspense, but I think back then McMaster's behavior wasn't seen as being that creepy. I do get the feeling that back then, well, in 1905, things were different than today. And now I have to give a spoiler warning. Like I said, the story begins with McMasters being homeless and finding a bag of a woman with money, keys, and an address in it. Well, like I said, I think this is absolutely stupid, but anyway, it's 1905. Honest as he is, McMasters goes to her house to return the bag, but she's not there, and before he goes to her house, he treats himself on a good meal from the money that is in the bag. But there's enough money to left over to return. When he rings at her apartment, she's not home, but he learns that she works every day, and with the keys he has, he decides to wait in her apartment for her return, which is creepy. By the way, there is more creepy stuff coming. He sees photos of her and her family and falls deeply in love with her. He starts to worry what she might think of him when she gets home. So he decides to leave before she gets home and he wants to return the next day. But he returns every day, but as time goes by, he never seems to sum up the courage to actually return the bag, especially because he's living off the money he found in the bag. Anyway, as he is homeless, he goes to her apartment every day, stays there and rests and daydreams and sleep or whatever. And if you think this is creepy, wait for the next thing, as this is even more creepy. While staying in her apartment, he falls even more deeply and deeply in love with her. She becomes his ideal woman. But he feels more and more ashamed as he spent her money, and he starts to get a job, decides to pay her back when he has the money. Good, you think. Some things come good out of this creepy behavior. He even gets his own apartment. So that's the end of the creepy behavior, right? Nope. It gets creepier. Instead of returning the money, he starts to buy her presents, which he leaves in her apartment. And he even gets upset when Ruth doesn't try to catch him and be grateful about it. This is all told from the perspective of McMasters, and it's written as this behavior is absolutely a normal thing to do. But Millholen adds a twist to the ending of the story, which nowadays seems very corny and predictable. An easy solution, I must say. But I guess this kind of ending back in 1905 wasn't as predictable and disappointing as it is nowadays. Anyway, when McMasters first enters Ruth's apartment, he falls asleep in a chair, and at the end of the story, months and months after McMasters found the bag, when he finally got his life back on track, McMasters decides to confront Ruth. He brings flowers, so I guess this makes him less creepy. But it's actually not. He opens the door with his keys, or well, with Ruth's keys, and expects Ruth to be home. But she isn't. And when he realizes that she isn't, his eyes open to the truth. Ruth has moved out a long, long time ago. So long ago that there is not only dust and cobwebs, but there is also rust everywhere. It's the old message, love can be blinding, and in this case, almost literally. I'd have to give it to Millholen that he doesn't spell this out, but you can't do nothing but come to this conclusion. Of course, Ruth has moved out. In the beginning, McMasters finds a receipt or a bill or something from the rent, and for 1905 a very large amount of cash. I don't know the inflation rate, but I guess it could be a month worth of salary. So she could have had trouble paying the rent and was kicked out of her apartment, but more likely I think she moved because she couldn't cough up the rent anymore. But then again, remains the question, why wasn't the lock changed, and why wasn't the apartment rented out to other people when she left? And the creepy thing is that A Lodger by Day is written as if this creepy behavior is completely normal. Of course, it's the way McMaster thinks, and it's obvious he has mental problems, as well as problems that he is homeless. But Millholen never clearly states McMaster's behavior is unacceptable. I like it when the reader, or when a writer, I must say, leaves something for the reader to think about. When writers don't push their thoughts, opinions, or beliefs or principles onto the reader. So why is this bothering me? I was asking myself that question. Could it be because I'm a woman? Could be, I don't know. And not condemning this behavior? Could be, I don't know. Could I feel this story as this behavior being a threat to women? Could be, I don't know. I can't imagine this behavior occurring today, even if the opportunity should arrive. Come to think of it, I do know of some sort of the same situation. A couple of decades ago, I read a newspaper article, and in this article, there was a man, a homeless man, had started to live in a family's attic. And the family, he lived there for I don't know how long, and the family never noticed. They noticed food went missing, and they didn't understand why food was missing. And this homeless man made it really cozy for himself in the attic. Well, obviously the family never visited the attic, and he used their bathroom and toilet and such things. But he always cleaned up after himself. He was very clean. But in the end, he got caught. The police came to get him, and he went voluntarily with them. So I guess this could happen, but there was no creepy romance involved in this story anyway. So I guess this can happen. I think the reason why I'm bothered by Millholen's story is that I misunderstand the way people thought back in 1905 when the story was written. Maybe this behavior wasn't seen as that problematic. I don't know. I know of the fact that women in certain society circles were very protective. Their male family members were very protective of them, and they couldn't go anywhere without a chaperone. Maybe this was for working class people different. I'm not an expert on it, I must admit, but I do think that in 1905, pushy behavior, in general, pushy advances of men towards women wasn't seen as stalking or problematic back in 1905. No, I think it wouldn't be frowned upon as it is nowadays. But maybe I should leave this topic to more knowledgeable YouTubers. So let's do a little thought experiment. Can I improve Millholen's story and keeping most elements in the story that Millholen conjured up with? Can I keep most elements intact of Millholen's story and but make it more modern. Well, let's and make it the same length as well. So I think this is a nice thought experiment to have. And I invite you to read the short story for yourself. It's only 8 pages, and there are a couple of illustrations breaking up the text as well. So it's not even 8 pages. I'll leave a link in the description box below. Most of the story are the internal thoughts of McMasters and the actions of McMasters. I don't think there's anything wrong with this, I must admit. We really see his struggle with his homeless status. So let's leave the fact that it is not logical to leave your keys and your home address in the same bag. It's 1905, so maybe not as strange back then. And even nowadays, people can make this kind of mistake. To make the story more suspenseful, we could add a little bit more mental problems. We could put more emphasis on the drama of being homeless and the necessity of a warm place and a dry place to stay. When McMasters first enters Ruth's apartment, it has been raining and McMasters is absolutely soaked to the core. So let's change this to snow and freezing cold outside. Let's add some background information about McMasters. Let's remember. Let him remember the warmth of the family he had and the happiness before he became homeless. Let's give him a family, a happy home, a well-kept lawn, a lovely wife. Let's add a kid, maybe a daughter, maybe a son, I don't know. Let's give him a dog. I think pets are nice. Let's give him a dog and a job at a bank or something. He's making good wages as, let's say, a bank teller or something. He's not rich, but he can feed and house his family and have plenty left over for Christmas and birthday presents, and also a modest holiday trip. Then tragedy strikes. His wife gets ill and dies. He's absolutely devastated. He tries to take care of his daughter. Well, let's say he has a daughter, but it could also be a son. But he's too distraught and he hits the bottle. And he often comes late at work. And in an unguarded moment, his daughter gets hit by a car and dies. Now he's really drinking, so much so that he doesn't bother to go to work at all, and he gets fired. His money runs out, he can't pay the rent, and he gets homeless. So we can keep in Ruth losing her bag. We can even keep in some of his McMaster's creepy behavior. We'll just prune it a little bit and make it more concise, so we have more space to add new stuff. Like I said, the goal is to keep the story the same length. We'll leave in the first time he enters Ruth's apartment. We can add in a dream where he dreams about his old family and his kid. And when he rests in one of Ruth's comfortable chairs, Just before he dozes off, he sees photographs of Ruth and her family. This will trigger the dream. We also going to leave in the same feeling of his intrusion and the fact that he decides to leave before Ruth comes home. It's quite understandable, is it not? The building up of the shame he feels because he is spending Ruth's money can also stay in the story, but I think it's better to give it more emphasis and meaning than Millholen did. Make it more important, as this way we get to sympathize more with McMasters. Make it more important anyway. We now get the feeling of, we all know the feeling when we did something wrong, we should put it right straight away. And we all know that the longer we put out this decision, the harder it gets to put things right. So we can feel, we can empathize with McMasters. Instead of having McMasters go into Ruth's apartment every day, let's have him watch the apartment from the opposite side of the street. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I guess we have to change the title, as A Lodger by Day isn't appropriate anymore. If you can find a better title, just let me know. Millholen lets McMasters see a woman on the stairs when he leaves the apartment. And I quite like this, as he never knows if this was Ruth or not. And we can use it later in the story. Let's make him convinced this beautiful woman is Ruth. How about a short interlude of him following her and losing her in a crowd or something? So he decides he has the lack of courage to speak to her. He decides he needs to become more respectable, and the money that was in Ruth's bag is running out. Millholen's story is set over a longer of a period, I think at least a couple of months, maybe years. I don't know. I don't quite remember. But I think it's better to let the first part of the story take place in a week or so, as this adds more suspense. So as Ruth's money is running out, he decides to spend the last money on going to a bathhouse, cleaning himself up, and getting some clean clothes and stuff like that. He goes to a hotel where he knows people, and he gets himself a job there. Now Millholen put him in the same situation. He lets McMasters go to this hotel where he stayed when he was still good, as it were, when he wasn't homeless. So that I like that idea. Maybe he knows some people there and can land him the job. So why didn't he get a job there in the first place? I think probably because he was on the sauce and he wasn't taking care of himself. So Ruth gives him the motivation to clean up his act. Anyway, it is not a spectacular job, but he's working his way up in the ranks, and not that he really gets a top function, a top job at this hotel, but he can keep himself, he can feed himself, he can keep himself warm, he can get an apartment, or not an apartment, maybe he can rent a room or anything. And this we can tell in a couple of paragraphs, 2 or 3, or maybe even just 1 paragraph. We can use this for this part of the story. In Millholen's story, we really feel the frustration of McMasters. But I think we can feed his frustration a little bit more and thus add more suspense by giving Ruth a more important role. We can put more extremes in McMaster's feelings than Millholen wrote. The inner dialogue of McMasters can be put in stronger words and more emotional sentences. We can really build up the suspense. But for this part, we really have to put our efforts in the actual writing skills, like putting sentences and words together. Millholen didn't try and make us feel the frustration McMasters feels, but I think we can get more out of this situation. Well, probably I couldn't, but I think a skilled writer could anyway. In the original story, McMasters goes into Ruth's apartment and stays there every day when Ruth is gone. And in the end, he decides, when he has cleaned his act up, he decides to buy Ruth presents, which he leaves in Ruth's apartment. I think it's really a really creepy thing to do. But we can leave some of that in. I know we have left out the part of him again and again entering Ruth's apartment, but he can leave presents outside of her door. Finally, we have the climax. McMasters is on the one hand afraid for confrontation, and he yet has to explain why he didn't return the bag, although by now he's probably so worked up he either doesn't care anymore or just plainly forgot about it. And on the other hand, he feels entitled to some gratitude and love. So I think in Millholen's story, he gets some flowers and enters Ruth's apartment. In Millholen's version, his eyes open to the fact that Ruth has left the apartment months ago and no one has lived there since. I suggest we let McMasters pace with his flowers up and down the street till Ruth comes home. We find some excuse why he doesn't speak to her, so we can have her enter the building and walking up the stairs, and McMasters with his flowers following her. Finally, McMasters on the stairs finds the courage to call her. She ignores him, and when she passes, she's on the floor Ruth lives. She passes and he realizes this isn't Ruth. This isn't Ruth at all. Maybe after a short hesitation he can keep following her, and when this woman comes to her, the apartment where she lives, she can open the door and he can hear a man calling out, honey, is that you, or something. Really predictable. Maybe a little girl that reminds McMasters of his daughter can run up to her, I don't know. So we can really get McMasters and let's fill him up with some good tears. Let's fill his eyes up with some tears. So he's absolutely disappointed. So he walks down with his flowers and his teary eyes, and let's when he comes to the floor where Ruth used to live, let's have him meet a woman. So out of this door comes this woman. Well, McMasters, he doesn't care anymore. He's so devastated that he wants to walk. He, from the corner of his eyes, he sees this woman. Without any notice, he gives the flowers to this woman and walks out the door. So we could leave the story open-ended like this. What do you think? Maybe we could add some interesting elements to it. Let's say, let's this woman say something. Should she say something? Let's have her say something. Let's have her say something like, "Thank you very much, Mr. McMasters." Let her say that. This gives the idea that this woman knows McMasters, and it gives them some sort of feeling, will these two meet again and get into a more intimate relation? I think that's a good ending of the story. Maybe we could add something more in the earlier on in the story, and let's have her give a job at the hotel McMasters wrote. Let's give her a cleaning job at a hotel or anything. Or if we want to be very unconventional, if this were in a modern sort of situation, we could give her a more important part in the hotel. But I think we don't have to specify what job she has at the hotel. Maybe we could mention her in passing. She works at the hotel. I think it's a nice idea to give the feeling that not all is lost for McMasters, and he has romance in the future. With this, we have kept McMasters' creepy romance story somewhat intact and made it a little bit more modern in the process. I invite you to read Millholen's story for yourself. Like I said, I'll put a link to where you can find this story and read it for free in the description box below. Now, I'm wondering if you like this little thought experiment, because it's always easy to judge other people's writing and commenting on them and don't give any constructive criticism. Not that I think Millholen is still alive today. It would be an absolute miracle if Millholen was alive today. But it gives a nice touch to see if and it's also a challenge for me to see if I can improve somebody else's story. Not that I think Millholen wrote a bad story overall. I just think it was it could have been better at it. He or she could have done a better job at it. But hey, it was the early times of the pulp magazines. So yeah. So let me know in the comments if you want to see more GarbAugust videos. There are links to all of the hosts and co-hosts. They make many videos about GarbAugust. You check their channels out. I recommend you do. I also leave a playlist to other videos of my long ongoing pulp project. And if you like this video, give it a like. And I hope to see you in the next video. Keep those pulp juices flowing.